Welcome back to the channel. My name is Brad, and today we're going to talk about BITY and BAGY from Amplified. We're going to go over the NEOS calls, and we're going to talk about GIAX and their call spreads for the week. If that is what you're interested in, stick around. So I am leaving chapters down below so you can go to the chapter that you're looking for, but you should probably watch the whole video. Now let's talk about BITY and BAGY from Amplified. BITY is going to try to get 24% annualized premiums. Okay, slightly less than BTCI. BAGY is going to try to get between 30 and 60% annualized premiums on Bitcoin. That is significantly more than BTCI. So how are they going to go about doing this? That is always the question that you have to ask. So BITY is going to write calls every single week. So is BAGY. They're going to write calls every single week to try to capture that premium every week. They're going to pay you monthly. Personally, I don't like any of the weekly payers. Anybody that has to do their budget on a week, I just don't know. I don't know about you. You don't pay your rent on weekly, and if you're paying your rent on weekly, I have to start questioning where you're actually living. But that's a totally different story for a different time. So they're going to try to capture that out of the money calls, about 5 to 10%. We'll see how they actually wrote their calls and if they're able to collect 24% premium. And they're doing this weekly. We'll see how that weekly is actually being able to adjust every single week. Now, I will tell you, I picked up a little bit of BAGY this morning. Sure, why not? Pick up a little bit of BAGY because I want to see if they can actually get those higher premiums. And I just turned it on the drip. BITY is writing on 70% or thereabout 71% of the total portfolio on a weekly basis. BAGY is close to 97% of the complete portfolio. That's what they wrote it on. If I put this on a chart, how does this look like? So you can see where BAGY and BITY actually wrote their calls. And you can see where BTCI wrote their calls. But remember, BAGY and BITY will be able to change their calls every single week. Where BTCI, it's done. They wrote their calls. That's it. They don't change them for another month. You can see last month they went through both of their strikes. For BTCI, each strike this month represents 21.2% of the portfolio. That's what they wrote it on. So now you have BITY and BAGY writing every week on a different percentage of the portfolio, but not 100%. But we'll see how this works out for them. So now let's go ahead and dig into the NEOS calls for the month. We'll just go throw this out. SPY-H. So SPY-H wrote their call. You can see where it's at. You can see where the box is. I tried to explain this last week, and maybe you got it, maybe you didn't. So if it's in the box, you're protected. So the very top of the box, that is where their protective put is. So basically, when it hits that top of that box, you're not going to see drop in the price. If it goes out of the bottom of the box, that's when you're going to start seeing price depreciation again. And you're going to get capped at that SPY-H line up at the top. That's where they have their strike. Moving on to QQQH, you can see they're coming quickly up on QQQH's call, and you can see where their box is. So if it stays in between, you're a winner. If it goes above, you're going to get capped. If it falls into the box, hey, you're not losing anything. If it goes out of the bottom of the box, that's when you're going to start losing again. So those are the calls for QQQH and SPY-H. But let's go ahead and get into SPY-I. So SPY-I wrote their calls slightly lower. Each strike is worth 30.5% of the portfolio. Thereabouts. Pretty close. So those are those strikes, and that's pretty close. So I broke it out evenly. It's not quite evenly, but we're just going to call it even for now. QQQI, hey, each strike is worth 27%, 27.5%, more or less, pretty close. Remember, the strikes do matter, and when you do the math, one strike might be worth a little bit more than the other, but we're going to call each strike about 27.5%. That tells you that they're writing on just over 50% of the portfolio, and the other percentage is not written on. So if it goes through both strikes, you'll be capped at 54%, but everything else will appreciate. IWMI, each strike is worth approximately 29.8%. Not exactly again. If they go through both strikes, now you can see that you're going to be capped on both of them, and they will equal that whole 58, 57%. And then the rest of it is not written on. And that's where IWMI strikes are written at. IYRI. That is another one. Each strike represents about 27.2%. You can see that they wrote on about 54.5% of the total portfolio. And that is where they get capped. And you can see that they wrote them slightly lower than last month's. So I'm actually now tracking last month's and this month's and putting them on the same chart so you can see them, so you can track it over time. Did it go through? Did it not go through? We saw BTCI go through, and we can track that every single month just for our general knowledge of knowing where these strikes are at. Let's move into GIAX. GIAX on the S&P 500 is above their call spreads. Looks like a good day today, and you can see where their call spreads are. Last week they were above, but the week before they were below, and the week before that they were above, and the week before that they were below. When they're below, they get a 0.5%. When they're above, they have to pay that gap, but then you collect all the premiums above, and you're capturing that gain. And if the underlyings, as long as the underlyings are going up, you are a winner. And that is the most important thing, is to be a winner. So they actually have the possibility of gaining again. If I look at GIAX on the NASDAQ, a clear winner. They're moving above the strikes. We'll see how this plays out. Remember, they roll their strikes on Tuesday, and today is Thursday, so we already know that they're past their spreads. On the Russell, the time I took the snapshot, the Russell was down, but now the Russell is slightly up, and we'll see how this plays out. Will they get through that call spread? Will they get through that call spread by Tuesday? Actually, close a business on Monday. We'll see. Today's Thursday. Anything is possible. We'll lose that gap, but we gain anything above. So hopefully you understand where these are at and why I look at these every single week. Because I'm looking at where they get capped, where they stop earning more, and did they stay below? Did they go above? And it's just interesting to know where these strikes are at and how these affect your portfolio. So next week, we'll cover all the strikes again, and we'll see where they were at, and we'll watch BITY and BAGY and see how they play out over time. Like I said, I picked up a little BAGY. I am turning drip on, and I've always said that BTCI, I am not going to reinvest anything above when Bitcoin gets above 110,000. But in between time, I'm taking my 8% and reinvesting the rest. So hopefully this is entertaining and educational. And until next time, God bless.